Olá, ouvintes da Rádio Mega Brasil Online. Olá, você que nos acompanha por imagem pelo nosso canal no YouTube. Marco Antonio Rossi está em merecidas férias e é por isso que hoje o Comunicação S.A., programa da Mega Brasil, será conduzido por mim, Renato Acciarto. Lembrando que o Comunicação S.A. destaca toda e qualquer ação de relacionamento e consolidação de marca. Aqui também falamos sobre novas iniciativas de negócios, análises de mercado, lançamentos de produtos e serviços e de ações que impactam positivamente a sociedade. Antes de iniciarmos o programa de hoje, eu quero deixar aqui um convite a você que nos assiste pelo YouTube e se inscreva no canal, curta a nossa página, clique no sininho de notificação e assim terá acesso a esse e outros conteúdos produzidos nessa plataforma pela Mega Brasil. Hoje, nossa conversa é com o Andrew McLuhan, 46 anos, ex-guitarrista de uma banda de punk rock. Ele é curador do McLuhan Institute, artista, escritor, poeta e é neto do célebre teórico sobre mídia dos anos 1960, Marshall McLuhan, o homem por trás do mantra "O meio é a mensagem", que traz até hoje discussões e reflexões para o mundo da comunicação. Tudo bem, Andrew? Você rodará agora por 3 grandes cidades brasileiras para o lançamento do livro Brand Publishing na Prática, do Paulo Henrique Ferreira, o qual você também faz o prefácio, né? É responsável pelo prefácio. Nesses encontros, você ainda fará uma palestra sobre comunidades editoriais e brand trust. Eu gostaria que você falasse um pouco sobre o tema desse livro e também sobre a sua palestra.
I think this maybe is even seen now, but it will become more clear over the next years just how much of a revolution it is. My grandfather, Marshall McLuhan, said that Gutenberg, Johannes Gutenberg with the printing press, made everybody a reader, and that Xerox, photocopying, made everybody a publisher. And the internet made everybody a celebrity or an influencer. I think AI is going to do something on that level as well. It's already quickly working its way into everything we do. And as a new technology does that, it forces us to reimagine and reconsider and reconfigure the way we do things. I think publishing is going to be very much the same. So it's interesting that this book and this approach to editorial publishing, brand publishing, comes at this time because we're in this kind of major transition. And it's really interesting to see how it plays out. So I was honored to be asked to write a preface to this work. I think it's very much concerned with my family's work. My family's work is in studying the nature and the effects of technologies through the ages, from the past to the present. As long as we continue to innovate, to create new technologies, we will need methods with which to explore what they're going to do. So in the preface, I talk about my family's work in communication in particular, and in technology more broadly. And it's obviously a great pleasure to be here in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, Belo Horizonte, places I've never been before, but I've been very pleasantly, not surprised, but it's been great being here and getting to know some of the people.
I would like to talk about your presentation, talk about the preface, but your presentation is about what else?
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about, the revolution in communications and technology, how that relates to my family's work, and to the subject at hand, brand publishing, the role of brands in communicating directly with the public, as distinct from, say, traditional advertising. This is something a little bit different. Instead of chasing social media and influence, This is about direct communication and information, not just selling. A funny thing is advertising in the United States anyway, I'm not sure about Brazil, but in the early 20th century, advertisers used to get tax breaks from the government because what they did in advertising was classified as educational services. Which was a nice dodge, but it didn't last too long. This is that, but sincerely, I think brands have a great opportunity with what the internet affords to be able to reach customers, consumers, and not just treat them as consumers, but to form a community and a place where people can come, not because they're forced to, because they see an advertisement, but because they want information and they want to belong and be part of a community in a genuine way, not a salesy way. This is new in the world, really, and it's made possible because of the internet, essentially. So this has a lot of effects. For one, it puts a new kind of power into the hands of brands because they don't have to go through other companies anymore. They don't have to pay hundreds, thousands, millions of dollars to reach people. In fact, people will come to them. So it creates a new dynamic between company and customer, consumer, audience. It actually creates more an audience than a consumer base. And that's a very interesting distinction. And it puts everybody into a different relationship, including the brand. Because now the brand's responsibility is to inform, not just to sell.
Ou seja, no passado nós tínhamos aí dois tipos de publicidade, né? Um que era voltado ao produto, no lançamento de produtos, e o outro que era voltado para aquela parte institucional, onde a empresa gostava de falar dela e de seus feitos. Então, na sua opinião, essa parte institucional está praticamente morrendo na forma de anúncio publicitário?
I think it has. I think more and more and more, people want more. People seem to crave a depth, and that can mean a lot of things. I guess it basically comes down to more information. So instead of just a product, it's more, as we said, a community, a lifestyle. They want to, they feel like when they buy something, they're not just buying a product, they're becoming part of something. And if that isn't reciprocated, then it feels like an empty experience. And people, I think, also have a better ability to detect deception, or when brands or companies aren't genuine about it. This is also even shifting the influencer landscape, because it's not enough to just pay a celebrity to say, buy this product. People see through that. And one of the effects of social media has been a change in the perception of relationship. That celebrities aren't just some faraway idol, but they're friends, and you don't treat friends the way you treat royalty. It's a different relationship. And so things have had to adjust from that as well.
Na sua opinião, há uma forma de transformar esse conteúdo em algo mais sexy? Porque, na verdade, no final das contas, você está agora numa briga de geração de conteúdo, né?
Well, you would probably want someone other than me delivering the content. That would help. Maybe more Brazilians. That might help too. Sure there is. And this, again, is part of this change, because traditionally in journalism, You might have a gentleman in a suit and tie delivering something, and that's great. It actually speaks to some authority, for sure, respectability. But it also creates a bit of a distance. And the name of the game is closeness, not distance.
Yeah.
Although there's a place for it. For example, perception is a funny thing. When you're looking for authority, when you're looking for trust, respectability, you communicate that in a suit and tie. It says something. Of course, you have to back it up, but it's not necessarily the case. You have to bridge to be relatable to people, to be familiar, also requires a looseness, a relaxedness, a sexiness even, and I think that's also important. How to bring the two things together is a great challenge. And it's interesting to see how that plays out.
Nós estamos conversando hoje com Andrew McLuhan. Vamos agora para um breve intervalo e voltamos já já. Estamos de volta com o programa Comunicação S, que entrevista hoje Andrew McLuhan, curador do McLuhan Institute. Ele é artista, poeta e neto de Marshall McLuhan, o homem por trás do mantra "O meio é a mensagem". Andrew, gostaria de saber de você um pouco sobre transição midiática. Isso você tem falado muito ultimamente, né? Como você vê as redes sociais, né? É mais do que nunca um reforço 6 décadas depois do que seu avô analisou sobre o meio sendo a mensagem?
It's interesting. When Marshall McLuhan said the medium is the message, it was at a radio broadcasters conference in Vancouver, Canada. And they were very concerned about this new thing, television, that was coming along and what it would mean for radio. Because radio was the major platform of the day. Television was this new thing coming in and shaking things up. Their advertisers were moving from radio to television, which was a big problem. And Marshall told them that the medium is the message, to try and reassure them that it didn't mean the death of radio. Indeed, we still have radio today. What it meant was what it means today, which is change. When a new medium comes along, a new technology, it takes over from the old technology, but the old technology is still with us. For example, books. There are more books published today than ever before in our world. Books are still here. Radio is still here. Television is still here. But their relationship to the world has changed. The relationship of the world to them has changed. Where people first go for information is no longer the radio or the television or the newspaper or the book. They go online. So Marshall McLuhan would say the same thing today to people concerned about AI. AI is coming in to revolutionize things. And this is what happens with technology. We will find our way with it, and there'll be bumps. But the other reason he said the medium is the message was to set the medium aside from the content. People sometimes think that he was trying to say that the content doesn't matter. Well, Marshall McLuhan was an English professor. He was a professor and lover of poetry. He wrote books. He was very concerned with content. But he understood that what changes people personally and socially was not so much the content, but the technology itself and how it becomes part of our lives almost before we realize it. He later said that if he were to use the word environment rather than medium, it would make more sense to people because it's the environment that shapes us. It's not the conversation we might have on the telephone that changes the world. It's the fact that we can have a conversation on the telephone, or that we can have a Zoom meeting, and the effect of a Zoom meeting on the workplace, on families. This happens because of the nature of the technology more than the nature of the content. And that is why the medium is and will always be the message, because it is the medium that changes the scale and the pace of humans and what we do.
Mas falando justamente sobre a mensagem, né? Quando eu trabalhei na Gazeta Mercantil, no jornal Gazeta Mercantil, nós entrevistávamos, por exemplo, o presidente de uma companhia, e isso podia ocupar, por exemplo, 2 páginas, até 2 páginas standard em um jornal. Hoje eu acredito que essa matéria não teria muito interesse, porque a mensagem, principalmente pelas redes sociais, está ficando cada vez mais rasa e não profunda, né? Como as mídias sociais podem ser tão fortes com um conteúdo tão raso?
It's funny because as a poet, I love words and language, and the way you said "so shallow" and then you said "social media" sounded
fantastic,
very close to each other.
Yeah, I've never thought.
And I don't believe in coincidences. Yeah. That's the beauty of language, is that it can mean so many things. There is a curious tension between those two things. We're like, we're so full of contradictions. At the one time, we're like a crow, right? The bird who sees the shiny object and gets distracted, right? At the other time, we also crave things in depth. And sometimes people will spend hours just scrolling through Twitter or Instagram or whatever. And other times we'll go down a deep rabbit hole on some subject that we're passionate about, be it poetry or punk rock music or a 4-hour podcast. We live in a world where these things coexist with each other. And it's interesting, that the means of communication have an effect on us and on our cognition, on the way that we think, on our focus, our ability to focus. It becomes very difficult in an age like this to focus for long periods of time. It requires determination that it didn't in the past, maybe. But that isn't to say it's impossible. Humans are such resilient creatures. We're plastic, we're able to change and adapt. And I think about it like a gym, right? You go to a gym and you work out to build muscles. And you can do this mentally as well. There's a big difference between reading something on paper and reading on a screen, because the human body behaves differently. When you're looking at a screen, the eye tends to skim and skip and kind of look around for things, right? Versus on a page, there's something about the printed word that holds the eye and keeps you reading more in a linear way. And just like at a gym, if you exercise, you develop habits and it becomes easier. So it might be difficult and people might have a hard time sitting down and reading a book, but it becomes easier over time. And this is, another reason why the medium is a message, because whether you can have the same book in a printed book or on an e-reader or on a screen, and they're completely different experiences. They might be the same content, but it's a different experience and a different effect.
Mas você consegue mudar esse hábito de trocar o celular pelo livro nos seus filhos, por exemplo?
Well, it's hard with kids. It's hard to know what to do. As a father, I'm in the same position as everybody else. You hear about the tech moguls who don't let their children look at cell phones. And you think, okay. And, being part of the family I'm part of, I know very well that, the average North American between the age of 8 and 18 spends more than 12 hours a day on screens, as they call it, for non-educational content, as if that makes a difference. And that's important because you understand that the effect on cognition and on the senses. And we are essentially, as humans, we are the product of that. So the question you ask as a parent is, who do I want my children to be? So a traditionalist might think, I want them to read books. I want them to be literate and book people. However, they live in today's world, right? And today's world is run by computers, not by books. Do you want them to be able to have a career? Because, if you do, then they're going to have to be familiar with computers. And so if you don't let them near screens, if you don't let them near computers, are you doing them a disservice? This important question.
Mas, Andrew, no passado falávamos sobre a falta de educação, era a falta de acesso à informação. E hoje a gente vê que não é isso, né?
Indeed, we're surrounded by more information than ever. It turns out that not all information, not all data is created equal. So we understand that it's what's more important than the data, the information, are the tools to process it and discernment, how to treat things. Media literacy covers this very well. Understanding that people behind information often have goals or agendas. And those agendas might be commercial in the case of advertising and marketing. They might be ideological. They might be propaganda. They might, there are all kinds of things. And we live in a society that encourages quickness and speed and judgment, discernment, taste even. These things take time. And that's, I think, what we're logically moving to in education is more of a focus on giving people, young people particularly, the sophistication to be able to understand information better.
Estamos conversando hoje com Andrew McLuhan. Vamos para um breve intervalo e voltamos já já.
Reputação é uma semente que se cultiva todos os dias. Reputação não é oportunidade. Reputação requer dedicação, compromisso e transparência. Reputação é reconhecimento. Troféu Jatobá Piar, um prêmio construído com dedicação, compromisso e transparência. Um prêmio que ajuda a construir a reputação da sua marca.
Estamos de volta com o programa Comunicação S, que entrevista hoje Andrew McLuhan. O tema agora é inteligência artificial. Andrew, é um risco que a mensagem possa virar repetição a partir da mesma leitura da inteligência artificial sobre os mais variados temas, tendo só o web, né, como biblioteca? A criatividade vai ser o diferencial contra a comoditização da informação?
We're familiar with something we call the echo chamber. in social media, especially, the tendency for our pools of information to be enclosed, very small. A lot of AI is what they call a large language model. So it searches vast amounts of data and information to come back with answers. And the interesting thing is that it can seem creative, but it's actually not. What it is it's very quick and accurate access to memory. And this is very different from spontaneous creation, which is one of the great things that humans are able to do, innovation. It's very difficult to synthesize that, to do that artificially. There's also a trend coming away from large language models to go to train on smaller data sets. So people will take a book, for example, and turn that into a language model, and essentially be able to have conversation with that book. People are also able to essentially use their own work as a data set and then train an AI to develop from that. The risk here, I think, is in this echo chamber, because it can, at least for now, it seems, only generate answers inside the available information. But human creativity, for example, when I heard you say so shallow and then social media, right? This is not something that AI can currently do. In fact, it's awful at it. Autocorrect is an example of this. You know, when you start to type something and it tries to give you the word you're looking for. But in my case, I'm often looking for a word that a computer doesn't understand, like so shallow, social media, right? Computers don't understand ambiguity, right? And ambiguity is, tedious for some and entertaining for others. It can get old if you make everything into a pun. But, a lot of human experience is in discovering the unexpected relationships between things. And I think AI at this point is very good at expected relationships. But that gets boring.
Duas perguntas em uma. Primeira, como você vê o risco de manipulação da informação a partir do uso da inteligência artificial? E segundo, a inteligência artificial, na sua visão hoje, ela é o meio ou é a mensagem?
It's not a risk of manipulation, it's a certainty. People used to call my grandfather a technological determinist, okay, because he highlighted the importance of the technology, of the form, of the medium, and its role in reshaping us. To that extent, he was a technological determinist. But he insisted that there is absolutely no inevitability as long as we're willing to contemplate the situation. Manipulation depends on a lack of awareness, right? I've been thinking recently about the relation between media and magic. Okay, magic as in the magician who does a card trick, right? And the magic is in what you don't see, and it's delightful. The difference with media, with technology, is that it's a magic trick that ends up not being so delightful because it's really a kind of identity theft. And by that I mean a new technology means a new world, and it means a new person, a new culture. And you get a new culture in exchange for your old culture. That is, it's not just a danger with technology or AI, it's a certainty. As long as we don't try to do anything about it. But the difficulty with new technology is we're almost always entirely focused on what we can do with it and not so much thinking about what it will do to us. And we don't ask the question whether what we can do with it is worth what it will do to us. Is AI medium or message? The difficulty there is that it's both. It's a very, very strong medium wrapped up in a very strong message. And I think we're getting the message.
Para o nosso fechamento, Andrew, gostaria que você falasse um pouco sobre essa sua ideia que há um início de um esgotamento de uso das telas. E mais do que isso demonstra uma possibilidade, uma tendência futura, talvez ainda distante, de uma desconexão, uma necessidade de desconexão do ser humano. Ele já está cansado de ficar totalmente conectado a todo tempo.
Possibility, sure. I think there are two factors there. The one is the screen, and the other is connection. And they're related, but I'm not sure they're dependent on each other. There is an interesting trend in new hardware developing away from screen-based interfaces, which have been the standard for over a decade. You know, if you think about the iPhone as kind of the big one that set us down that path, it's always good to have, and it's difficult, but to have a historical perspective when you think about in how short a time screens came to dominate everything. I went to a concert with my kids a few weeks back, and it was the first major concert I'd been to in a long time. And I knew that, you know, when I used to go to concerts when I was a kid, people would hold up a lighter, you know, and now when you go to a concert, everybody's got their phones up. And what you see in front of you is like the band on the stage and then a million smartphones being held up and recorded. It's shocking how quickly that has become the case. And equally interesting is, I think, now the pushback against that. There are a lot of concerts, in fact, it's kind of a trend, to make people check their cell phone as they come into the room. I was at a conference last week where the host at the beginning asked people for their full presence, right? To not be checking their phone and texting messages, pictures, whatever, but to be present in the moment. So there's definitely a pushback against that. And a lot of the new hardware we're seeing, like Humane's AI pin, is a voice audio interface with a funky laser that comes down. I'm not sure, in fact, they won't replace the screen because, again, we still have books, we still have televisions. But I think the dominance of the screen, the mobile small smartphone screen, may be coming to an end. We'll see. It's just a trend, and sometimes trends die off, and sometimes they take over. When smartphones were new, when the iPhone was new, you can go back and look at how people were talking about it. People were like, who's going to want to carry this thing around and be always available? It's never going to catch on, right? So everybody would love to know the magic formula of what catches on and what doesn't. If you figure that out, you can make a lot of money. I don't know if we can. Well, maybe AI can figure that out. We'll see.
And I would like to thank you very much for your presence with us. Any word to close?
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I love Brazil. The word to close is, I think, what my grandfather said, is that nothing is for sure. Nothing is written in stone, especially today. That our future is up to us. And as long as we have a willingness to pay attention, we can have a hand in shaping our future.
E chegamos ao final do nosso encontro de hoje. Andrew, agradecemos muito pelo seu tempo e pela deferência de ter escolhido o programa Comunicação S nessa sua visita ao Brasil. Agradecemos você também, telespectador e ouvinte que nos acompanhou até aqui. E semana que vem tem mais do Comunicação S. Até lá!